I'll make a motion to call the meeting to order. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Does anyone have any items they wish to disclose or recuse themselves from? Okay. All right. With further ado, I would like to continue the budget discussion that was tabled in our last meeting. And with that, we'll go through a brief presentation on the 2019-2020 budget. And I'll try to stay in Renee where I'm not blocking you anymore. Okay, next. We just have a summary of what the budget funds. Snow removal. This includes purchasing salt from the town of Pittsford. We're usually billed once a year in the spring. Often it's hard to predict, obviously, because our weather varies. Unlike most municipalities, we do brush pickup year-round on a weather permitting basis. We pick up leaves in the fall, not monthly, not once or twice a season, but at least every week, sometimes twice a week, if the schedule permits. We maintain an urban forest throughout the village. We have an inventory of trees. We prune, plant, and remove trees. We also assess the trees each year. We have an inventory that we update each year as we plant and remove trees. And we have recently been recertified as a Tree City USA. Thank you, Sophie Bennett. Normally, we reconstruct 10 to 12 catch basins each year. Catch basins, there's either a precast or a masonry unit base underneath the metal grate that you see in the street. Due to salt and everything else that goes down there, these need to be cleaned. They also deteriorate rather rapidly, so this is an ongoing maintenance problem for the village each year. Sidewalk replacement, because of our trees in some places, sidewalks get heaved, lifted by roots, deteriorate due to salt, age, cracking, and we do both interim replacements like you see here, and in some cases when the sidewalks are old, we'll replace a long stretch along an entire length of street. Again, through the summer, we do weekly brush removal. We are encouraging residents to not put their grass clippings by the side of the road, and that's done at the recommendation of DEC. In addition to that, we maintain the waterfront along Shane Place. We plow the towpath through the village. We maintain a number of parks that we have established over the last 15 years. Landscaping, including flowers, trees, special landscaping in the medians and park spaces. Decorative street lighting, holiday decorations. We put up banners on special events, street patching and repairing, sanitary sewer maintenance, dock repair, bench maintenance, pavilion repair and maintenance, and a number of other things, many of the amenities that we have established and maintained throughout the village. We also are responsible for our village buildings, including this building, which includes the doors, the mechanical systems, the roofing system. Last winter we replaced the copper roof on the front wing of this building. We expect it should have a lifespan of about 80 years. We have a project currently to replace our hard drive and put all the information that we store, all the data that we have, onto a cloud, and that project is underway. We have recently completed an active transportation plan, which in the next month or so we should be adopting in concert with the town of Pittsford. Out of that plan came the first phase implementation. We received funding for a $249,000 project from Senator Rich Funke to do the pedestrian safety plan, which in the active transportation plan we identified the 4 most strategically important places to improve pedestrian safety in the village. These include the 4 arteries leading into the 4 corners: Monroe Avenue at Washington Avenue, South Main Street at Church Street, State Street by the Pittsburgh Community Library, and a number of locations down North Main Street that will make pedestrian crossings safer and add 2 pedestrian crossings on North Main Street where there's crossing activity but no crosswalks exist. Generally, under traditional neighborhood planning design guidelines, on most arterial streets you want a crosswalk at least every 300 feet. These additional new crosswalks will help us meet that standard. By funding a number of new initiatives, the village budget looks to the future. Unfortunately, we're still looking to the past because we're still defending the litigation involved in 75 Monroe. Our prediction is it looks like that sequence of addressing the litigation will come to an end in this year. So we're all looking forward to that. It's been a long path. We are currently working on a new comprehensive plan and are getting we just received the draft from the consultant for that. And we, at the same time, because we wanted to translate that into action, we are, the Board of Trustees is working on a comprehensive code update. And there will be a 3rd phase because we didn't know all of the things that the Comprehensive Plan Committee may feel are important for the future. So after these 2 phases are done, there may be another segment of code updates based on recommendations from the Comprehensive Plan Committee. That committee has been working for the last 2 years, and the trustees have been working roughly 18 months, the last 18 months on the code updates. We have set a deadline of October of 2019 to conclude both projects and adopt both the new comprehensive plan and the first phase of code updates by the village board. We are continuing sidewalk repairs and replacement. We are continuing community outreach. We are investigating ways because traditional media has been in decline to do a better job communicating with our residents. I already mentioned relocating the village data. We are planning for implementation of traffic calming improvements on the village, and particularly we have delayed the reconstruction of South Street because we've heard from residents that traffic speeds on that street are a problem. We've also done a more detailed look at some of the infrastructure that was installed by the county when that was a county road in the 1980s. And there are sections of storm sewer and gutter that also need to be replaced, so it's a larger project. So this has given Frank and Zach. Frank has been sort of the project manager on this to figure out funding of the project and a schedule. And we've also hired SRF to recommend traffic calming measures that we will incorporate into the design of the reconstructed street. Lastly, we're replanting trees that are lost. Tree planting was something that was reduced in the last few years in our budget. This year, in inventory of trees, we have several large trees that have become a safety hazard and have to come down. So we've restored full funding to that budget category. That's all right. And Frank, if I forget anything, don't hesitate to jump in here.
Okay.
In developing the current budget, the village has undertaken an exhaustive analysis of long-term budget trends, changing operational mandates, growing service demands, projected future operational expenses in accordance with advice from the New York State Comptroller's Office. Several years ago, we did a 30-year exhaustive study of village revenues and services. And one of the things that we were aware of is that the services this village offers, as the village has changed and grown, have greatly expanded. Revenues had not kept pace, so at that time a strategic decision was to make, rather than do a huge bump in tax revenue, to gradually phase in tax increases that were greater than the rate of inflation, so that the hit our residents receive would be gradual instead of a shock. And we have, I'm proud to say, we've stuck with that strategy, and our revenue stream is in a much better position than it was 5 years ago when we began this.
Oh, no.
Oh, Well, that's not gonna do us
Well,
much
I'm
good.
gonna apologize, it's the transfer over to the pad. It's a beautiful pie chart. Can't show it.
No expenses, no revenues, you're all set.
Yeah, it's going great.
Well, what I can say from memory is over half our expenditures are salaries.
Correct.
And what I can say about revenues is that, as you probably all know, over the last 20 years, New York State has frozen or diminished all sources of state aid to municipalities. And this is not something unique to the village of Pittsford. It's true across the state. And last time when we first started looking at this, property taxes represented 41% of our revenues because Monroe County sales tax and state aid represented the rest. This year, property tax is about 50%, and that is largely due to the state reducing a state through the CHIPS program, which funds highway work, and AIM, which is municipal aid, that this was formerly a fairly large number given to municipalities. In our budget, because we're small, AIM, I believe this year is a little bit over $9,000. This graph shows the trends in sales tax and property tax trends. The red is property tax, the blue is sales tax, and you can see that sales tax has been largely flat, although there was a drop in the last year. You can see that the village general fund has been, for the most part, has been pretty flat. This is the period where we began revenue adjustment, but since that time, the village has been basically flat. One of the trends, when you look at a village that's small like Pittsford, our total general fund budget, I think it was 1.2, 1.3 million, 1.4 million.
1.4.
1.4 million. Small municipalities, because we're affected by capital projects, if we do a road project or buy a large piece of equipment, we could see a large single-year increase in expenditure. So the point is, small municipalities tend to have more volatile budgets. Ours is quite, for a small municipality, is surprisingly stable. This is a history of the general fund, and you can see it's almost flat. This is a 30-year history of the village tax rate. And again, this last portion would represent the revenue adjustment program that we've had over the last 5 years. This is from beginning in 1986. This shows the adjustment of the village tax rate. And what you'll notice is that part of the reason for the revenue adjustment 5 years ago was before that, most of the time the village tax rate was completely flat. A few places went down 12%, 5% down. And when we did the evaluation 5 years ago, what we found is that in dollars adjusted for inflation, the village tax revenue had decreased 25% less than it had been 30 years before that. And there's probably no other municipality that could say that, but when we made the decision to adjust revenues, we had a solid basis for doing so. And here we are, 1986, 87, the village tax rate was $4.64. In 2019 and 2020, the village tax rate is $4, so we're still 16% lower than we were in 1986, 1987. There aren't too many other municipalities that could make that claim. One of our sources of revenue, which had been significant before 2008, was gross receipts income, and you can see that now we've got it decreased by almost 2/3. It's grown a little bit since then, but that was one of the hits that we took in revenue for the village. Interest income was something that we did benefit in the year 2006, 2007, but since 2009, 2010, With low interest rates, that has pretty much gone away as a significant source of revenue for the village. The New York State retirement system, although it is well funded, the contributions that municipalities must make are notoriously volatile and hard to predict. This is the history of our contributions since 2005. Health insurance costs, as everyone knows, have increased. The village has every year investigated the best deal. We've increased the proportion of health care that our employees pay to make them aware of the rising costs and also limit the cost in our budget. And we've done a fairly good job. This year, surprisingly, we were actually able to hold the line on health care costs. I already talked about this, so we'll skip by that. These are some of the cost-saving measures the village has already implemented. Pittsford really led the way in terms of municipal collaboration. The town, village, and school district have had a leadership committee where we meet bi-monthly, or every other month, looking for ways that we can collaborate and share services. Some of the shared services that we benefit from are the library, animal control officer, courts, assessor, fire marshal, and municipal parking. And our parking monitor is actually a shared employee between the village and the town of Pittsford. We have labor, equipment, and sharing agreements with the town and school district. We also, many times, we've borrowed equipment from East Rochester, Fairport, and the town of Brighton. Recently, we switched the street lights to more energy efficient fixtures. We're also looking right now at a plan for upgrading the historic harp lights that will hopefully keep the aesthetic character with a much more efficient electrical system. Next. This is a comparison of our tax rate. We are right here with the other villages in Monroe County, and you can see that although we are the smallest village in Monroe County, we have a population based on the latest statistics of about 1,700 residents. The closest village to us is Spencerport, or Scottsville, which is just about 1,900 residents. But we are right, even though we have a smaller economy of scale, we are right in the middle of tax rates in Monroe County for the 10 other villages. For comparison, these are some, and the Skinny Atlas tax rate, they have a police force. That is their tax rate without the police force calculated, $3.48. Churchville is $3.20. Scottsville is $7.37, and our proposed tax rate is $4. Across New York State, the average village in New York State has a tax rate of $6.74. The median tax rate for villages in New York State is $5.69. Frank Galusha did this research. Our proposed tax rate, again, is $4 per thousand. What has changed in our village, and as some of this, I'll repeat what I said before, increased service demands. We've changed as a village over the last 2.5 decades that I've been mayor. There has been literally hundreds of thousands of dollars invested into our residents. And what's unusual about our village is these are very modest houses that people have invested money in because they like the village environment that we have maintained here in Pittsford. The unfunded and state federal mandates, these are additional requirements that our staff has to do in filing information, in the way they maintain information, policies that we've had to adopt, things our DPW has to do for stormwater management regulations. It's across the board. We receive no additional funding for this work, but like all municipalities in New York State, we are bound to increase our services to accommodate these mandates. Stagnant and negative revenue growth, and largely because of reduced state funding and stagnant growth on the Monroe County sales tax benefit. Rising costs, especially state health care, materials, equipment, and once again this year gasoline has shot up, so that's another one that we're facing. And lastly, we have aging infrastructure. One of the things in the next few years, in addition to trying to accommodate traffic calming as we rebuild our streets are now getting at the age where the curbs are crumbling, some of the stormwater systems need to be rebuilt, and so our paving costs we expect to increase as we go forward because our infrastructure is simply at that age where it needs to be rebuilt. And that's something, we all want to hold the line in taxes, but if we don't invest in our infrastructure, we're only digging ourselves a hole. And so we're trying, it may not be popular, I realize that, but the correct and the wise decision as stewards of this village is to invest in our infrastructure so that we have a future. Just a few examples of the changes to village services that I mentioned before. South Street used to be a county road. It was transferred from Monroe County to the village. We've added sidewalks, pavilions, benches, trees, lampposts on Shane Place. We created a waterfront promenade that didn't exist. We've created a park system that didn't exist. I mentioned expanded New York State administrative requirements. Transitioning to digital records, this also affects our records management system. We have a records management officer. All the records of the activity today are filed according to a system determined by New York State. And if you go in the second floor of this building, it's not empty rooms, it's full of our archives with a staff person that manages that and aggressively gets grants to help us with it, but it is a lot of work. We have open meeting laws and FOIL requirements that have changed. We have a certified local government, which we have to file an annual report. There's training requirements for our board members that didn't used to exist. We do things like plow the towpath, and there's a number of other things. This is just a summary. It's not everything that we have added. Oh, here's some more things. Okay. I think most of these things I've added, so I'm just going to keep going through here. I think I've mentioned most of those things before. Yep. One thing I will mention is we're working to, for a long time, the old railroad right-of-way behind Shane Place has been used for informal parking. With an informal agreement with RG&E, we have leveled the area and spread gravel or millings and made parking there possible. We are working on a permanent solution, but there is a cost to that, both in a permanent lease that we hope to receive from RG&E and from future improvements that we may have to make in that area. Portable toilets on Shane Place is just another example, and there's lots of small things like that that the village didn't used to do as we have transformed into a regional destination of importance. There's a service requirement and a appearance requirement that we have, our DPW, in addition to maintaining the streets, also has become sort of a park crew because there's areas throughout the village that used to be weeds that are now groomed and look like a park. And it's a great compliment to our DPW that our village looks the way it does. Let's see. Let's go through this. I think I've talked about this. Are we doing surface treatments? Is that accurate, Frank?
Yes.
Okay, so we're doing surface treatments this year. This is a chip seal program, which is a maintenance for Heatherhurst Drive, Courtney Circle, Green Hill Lane, and Grove Street Extension. Next.
The South Street one is not, it's being put off.
South Street, Frank is still working on the schedule for that project.
And I think it's.
Would you like to add anything, Frank? I'm sorry. I didn't mean to take your thunder.
No, not much.
It was on the,
South Street is a little bit of a problem because in order to pave it and use state funds, CHIPS funds, we have to rebuild the crosswalks to make them ADA compliant. That's increasing our cost substantially. We have to do some curbing, and we're almost completing cammering the sewer lines that run down South Street. We don't want to pave the street and then have to dig it up because the sewer line broke. So we are doing that, So we're trying to evaluate what we can do this year without having to dig up what we did this year, next year. One of the things we have to do that we've been talking with the fire department about is speed control. They have a lot to say about what we do to the street with regards to traffic calming. Many of our traffic calming measures, they're not too happy with, and I can understand that. We had them here one week, and the director of the ambulance corps, when we were talking about speed humps, he said, think about what it's like going down South Street, riding in the back of an ambulance and going over speed humps. I thought, that's really not very comfortable. So this year, one of our DPW people, Doug Yeager, is with the fire department. He's the chief, and we're trying to determine what we can do this year to get the project going. And we're thinking maybe we can mill and pave it this year and possibly make the crosswalks ADA compliant. But we have to make a decision within the next few weeks, and Zach Blyer, our superintendent, and I will be making a presentation to the board to determine what the board wants to do. That's all I have.
Thank you, Frank. All right, I've mentioned this many times before, but I think it's important to include because not everybody has heard it. Legal expenses has been an important issue for the last 8 years. As elected representatives for the Village of Pittsford, we all take an oath of office to uphold New York State law and village code. That is not optional, it's mandatory. What happened with 75 Monroe is that the applicant tried to circumvent, and this is a common strategy among developers, circumvent basic zoning requirements by going through litigation. And we also had 2 additional lawsuits from the Friends of Pittsford Village. Historically, the village has had annual legal fees of about $100,000, and that $100,000 includes attorney advice to the Board of Trustees, the Historic Preservation Board, the Planning Board, and the Zoning Board of Appeals, in addition to covering some incidental litigation that may occur. In recent years, because of the 8 lawsuits, I believe, involving 75 Monroe, the expenses ballooned. Over the years, the village has carried a fairly large fund balance to cover emergency and unanticipated expenses. Wisely, that fund balance was used to cover much of the litigation expense from these lawsuits. We are now, according to our attorneys, at the end of the road in terms of the legal path of where this goes, and the 2 outstanding lawsuits that have not been resolved, we believe should be resolved by the end of the year. So we're looking forward to that. We have included money based on the recommendations for the attorneys representing the APRB, PZBA, and trustees for their estimates of projected legal costs for 2019 and 2020, and those are included in our budget. It's about the same as last year. It's far less than the years of the peak litigation of this very, very long and excruciating process. Just litigation fact check, there's been a lot of opinions cited about this. Just a few things to keep straight. The village is a respondent in all litigation. We have not sued anybody. We are legally required to respond to all lawsuits against the village, and we have done so. The village is legally obligated to defend the Planning Board, the Historic Preservation Board, and the Zoning Board of Appeals. The trustees do not decide whether we defend these. It is the decision of the volunteers that staff those respective boards. Any citizen has the right to challenge decisions of all municipal boards by filing an Article 78 lawsuit. The village has no control over the frequency of these actions or who takes them. We have sought to negotiate to resolve some of these lawsuits, some successfully, some not so much. Negotiation also accrues significant legal expenses because you need to have attorneys present when you're in that process. Next.
Can I say something?
Yep.
There was a term used, fund balance, which those of you in the business world know that as net worth. And about 2 years ago, the village went through a state audit. The state controller's office came in, they audited us, and they found no fiscal stress, no designation. They have various categories where they will cite if there is fiscal stress. They did cite that our fund balance decreased because of the legal fees, but we are not under fiscal stress. And what we're trying to do right now is to maintain our net worth, our fund balance, so we are not designated under fiscal stress.
Thank you, Frank. This graph basically shows the village had pretty steady legal fees. This is in 2015 was the beginning of litigation on 75 Monroe. This shows you the projected amount that we're budgeting for the current year. Next.
And that's it.
And that's it. Any questions? Okay, since there are no questions, I will make a motion to close the budget hearing for the 2019-2020 budget. Do I have a second?
Second, can the residents comment?
Yes, but let's not close the public hearing. Yes, would you like to make a comment, Justin?
Yeah, well, I guess one comment I've had is I know we're a tiny percentage of the budget, but the planning board and zoning board has not had a chance to discuss any of our expectations, and I haven't had enough information to even generate proposals. I just want to make the board aware that there's a couple things that we do. We review applications, obviously, which everything in your budget is adequate for that. We have a fixed price contract with our attorney, which is actually an excellent value. I think we get the better end of that we probably use more services than we're billed for, and a rate, I know you've negotiated a very reasonable rate with her for that. We also have the ability, other than just reviewing applications, is we can initiate planning activities, and we also respond to referrals. I just want to make the board aware that some special projects I do expect to come along this year. Namely, some of these large projects you're undergoing need to get referred to us for the code updates, the comp plan, and the review of the active transportation plan. The trustees, and we're supposed to be a sounding board for you guys. Many referrals are mandatory, but I mean the point is we take a look at them and give suggestions for how to fix them and evaluate the more technical end of them. When we're doing these, I would not be surprised if we may want to call on some consultants from an engineer to take a look at some of the new code changes and see if application requirements and design standards are appropriate. Same thing for a landscape architect. I also do not believe our attorney's contract funds these kind of special projects. So since I don't know how expensive our review is going to be, because I don't know what we're going to get, I have a very hard time estimating these costs. I just wanted to make you aware that something could be coming along. I'm happy to have a discussion with you.
If you could you get an estimate of how much you think those costs would be?
I can certainly look into that, but as I said, because I don't know what we're going to get, we may be okay with everything and not need consultants, where we may need to, my guess is it would be in the order of a few $1,000s.
Okay. Well, one of the things that we did do at the last budget hearing is we added another $10,000 to the contingency. And for the last few years, our contingency has been underfunded, and wisely, the board agreed to significantly increase it this year. So if it's a matter of a few $1,000s, we probably have you covered.
Okay, I just wanted to share and make you aware of that.
Okay.
I'm not expecting it to be an enormous charge, it'll be a budget buster. I just
Yeah.
wanted to do my responsibilities as a board chair and share what I'm expecting coming up.
One of the reasons we did this is because there are some unknowns about the adoption of the comprehensive plan and some of the other unanticipated consequences that that will bring about. So I think the board made a good decision. Any other comments? Yes?
On the comprehensive plan, there's some initiatives that would be suggested from that plan going forward. Is there anything in the budget to plan for those at this point, or is that in the next fiscal year?
I think it was hard to plan for those because we didn't want to limit the comprehensive plan committee on what they might or might not recommend. So we basically sort of put that off to the following year. We do have some additional money in our budget that we probably could get some of that started. But I assume by the end of this year, we'll better know what the scope of that is and we can budget more precisely for it in our next year's budget.
I want to applaud the board, because I know this taken months to go through this process, and I'm disappointed so few citizens are here to hear that report that you've done on that very detail. I think that people's expectations of services are very high in this community and the infrastructure, so I applaud that. I hope we keep funding that. It's not the most popular thing, but it's a necessary, and we have to build for that because those are big ticket items. Was there any other balanced budget proposed that the board considered? Complete budget or not?
Well, going back to what you were talking about with regards to the comprehensive plan, there is money in the budget. I was just trying to find it when you were talking, but Mary, do you remember?
25K,
I think it's about 18,000,
25.
25.
25,
So
yeah.
we do have money in the
Is that
budget.
for the consulting?
That's for consulting because we believe after the comprehensive plan committee is done, there may be other code updates that we're not aware of yet, but may come out of their work, and we wanted to be able to make those happen.
I appreciate that.
So we do have money for it.
And I also want to thank Mary and Dorothea, and particularly Mary Morowski, because Dorothea was out 3 months with medical leave, no fault of hers. But Mary managed to do an amazing job on this year's budget. Spent hundreds and hundreds of hours and still managed to keep the office running intact. And we owe her a great level of service. So. The other thanks I'd like, and this came out in our recent village-wide survey, we had virtually an 80% endorsement of our DPW crew. And not only does this speak to the quality of the work the crew does itself, but also to the work of our superintendent, Zach. So I always like thanking other people because I'm blessed to have a great team here in our village. So with that, any other comments? With that, I would make a motion to close the public hearing on this year's budget.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Would someone like to make a motion?
Go ahead, Frank.
Motion for what?
The budget, to approve the budget.
Ah, all right, I'll make a motion that we accept the 2019, 2020 fiscal budget to begin June 1st, 2019.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, the budget is approved. Thank you, everyone. The next item we have is our 2019 organizational minutes.
Bob,
Yep.
before we go into the organizational, I requested an executive session really quick.
Okay, you can all stay here. We'll go in the front room and this will take probably 10-15 minutes.
Motion?
I'll make a motion to enter executive session to discuss the performance of two individuals.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, let's go through,
We have to reconvene.
we have to make a motion to enter regular session. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And we're gonna go through, section by section with a resolution at each section. Talk to Lily Lanfear, she's willing to continue as deputy mayor, I will appoint her. That's just a mayoral appointment, that doesn't require approval from the board. For everybody's information, deputy mayor is at the discretion of the mayor, you can change it every week. It's, the deputy mayor fills in any events that I'm not able to make or fill any responsibility that I'm unable to fulfill. And thank you, Lily, for agreeing to do that. Appointment of specialized services. Any questions?
No.
Would someone like to make a motion?
We're actually gonna, I'm sorry to correct the board, we're gonna go through each one of these,
Okay,
Okay.
sorry.
all right. Menge Metzger Bar and Company, CPA, for a one-year term ending in 2020.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Scott Harder as village engineer for 1 year for a term ending in 2020. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Steve Robson as village assessor for a 1-year term ending 2020. So moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Gary Wilkins as village insurance agent for a 1-year term ending 2020.
Second.
I'll make the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Bernard Dunnigan as financial advisors for a 1-year term ending 2020. So moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Accord Landscaping as the village landscape architect for a 1-year term ending 2020. So moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Maria Hewitt as the historic preservation consultant for a 1-year term for the HPB ending 2020. So moved. Do I have a second? All in favor? Aye. Q-Tech Engineering for site lighting review for the PZBA for a 1-year term ending 2020. So moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Pebble Stream for landscape architectural consulting for the PZBA for a 1-year term ending 2020. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Legal representation. Jeffrey Turner as a village board attorney at a rate of $125 per hour for a 1-year term ending 2020. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Jeffrey Turner as HPB attorney at a rate of $125 per hour for a 1-year term ending 2020. So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Mindy Zoglin of the Zoglin Group PLLC for a 1-year term representing the PZBA for the term ending in 2020. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Timothy McGill as municipal bond attorney for a 1-year term ending 2020. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Hodgson Russ as special counsel for 75 Monroe for a 1-year term ending 2020. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. The Historic Preservation Board, appoint Bill McBride as chairman to the Historic Preservation Board for a 1-year term ending 2020. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Appoint Lisa Cove to the Historic Preservation Board for a 3-year term ending in 2022. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Appoint Ken Morrow to the Historic Preservation Board for a 3-year term ending in 2022. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Uh,
I don't know about that.
no. Appoint Mark Harrison
Aaron.
for a 3-year term ending in 2020. There's a mistake here. But it should be Mark Harrison. Ron Johnson resigned.
Isn't it Harrington?
No, this is the
Harrington.
alternate.
Harrington.
Yeah, you appointed him at another meeting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mark Harrington's okay, this is the
But
alternate.
Ron Johnson resigned.
Oh, that's
So
involved.
he doesn't want to be on the board.
Okay, then that's a vacancy.
All right, so Mark Harrington, we don't have to do anything with.
Yep,
Okay.
sorry about that.
But you have to do Ken Marmor,
Okay.
right? Ken Marmor, did you do?
We already
Yeah, we
did Ken
did.
Mark.
Oh, we
Already
did? Okay,
yeah.
sorry.
It goes back.
PZBA, appoint Justin Valistra as chairman to the PZBA for a 1-year term ending in 2020. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Appoint Eli Bannister to the PZBA for a 5-year term ending in 2024. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Appoint Justin Lightgeb to the PZBA to fulfill the term ending in 2024. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And that's all.
Another vacancy.
Another vacancy we still need to fill.
Now this is a.
I talked to David Marshall and I think he's gonna do it.
The
So,
alternate?
yeah, he's gonna wait a month or so, but he's gonna do it. Okay. All right, wage compensation, Board of
You don't
We just-
need to go through these are the chart, you just approved the full chart with the amendments.
Would someone like to make a motion to approve the proposed wage compensation for 2019, 2020?
Can I make a comment?
Yep.
Linda Habib is our secretary for the planning board and zoning board and architectural review board, and she does an outstanding job, and I would really be nice if the trustees could recognize her and give her a raise in recognition of her good service.
She's already receiving a raise in this budget as per schedule.
Okay, I'm just sharing a comment.
Yep, no.
It's up to the board's discretion.
We're already there. Would someone like to make a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And that's with the 2 proposed salary changes, correct?
All right, liaison positions. I've talked to everybody individually. If you, the board members, would just take a quick look at this list and make sure it's correct. If there's anything anyone would like to do differently, just,
I haven't signed any,
we
Yeah.
still have Kara Barris on here, which,
well, that's because those are
That's
18,
last
19, we
year.
haven't assigned anybody.
oh,
I didn't
okay.
get
That's
the rest.
right, I'm fine with, the streetscape thing. Peggy, she didn't have a, she did a little bit, that's right. It didn't turn out that it needed 2 of us, is what I'm trying to stop.
Let's go through here because I want to make sure we can replace, in all the positions it says Kara Barris, we need to have a new
Okay,
name.
so you're on the HPB.
I'm on the,
Do you wanna
well,
just-
let's start with trees. I'm on the trees and I'll continue to do trees. I love trees.
Okay,
Everybody knows that.
yes.
Okay,
I don't
I'm
know
a
the
geek.
next 2 well.
I don't think it
I
does
admit it.
either. for the-
all right, economic, I know Dan is comfortable being economic development. Who would like to do that with Dan?
Does it need to?
Um,
I think he can call on any of us if he can't make
Okay,
the
all right,
meeting.
so we'll just leave
And
Dan
we'll
there. All right.
Pitch.
PZBA is Lanfear and Keating.
Not me, any, he
I
was
think it's-
handling it just fine on his own.
Yep, and I think we can.
Uh,
we're gonna have
And
to
we can
continue.
fill in if necessary, any of us. HPB, that can be me. I'm happy with going to HPB meetings. I think that makes sense. I'm happy continuing to be the liaison to the treasurer. Frank, I know I've talked to Frank. He will continue with the DPW, which I'm thankful because that's a big job. Fire marshal and building inspector, I think that's, if you're willing to continue as a secondary person, I'm happy to do that. I've got a good
Okay.
relationship with Steve. Streetscape beautification, I would be happy to work with you on that, Lily, if you.
Okay, I might let you
Well, you're the lead, I'm the secondary person. Town supervisor, that has been, Frank and I think,
That's-
are you
I think
willing to
that's good to
continue
continue
with Bill?
Yes.
Okay, I think that's fine. Okay, newsletter, Freed and Keating. Would someone like to work with Dan on the newsletter?
Oh, I can do that.
Okay, all right, we'll put you in there. Renee.
I think we need to go back to leadership.
Yeah, I skipped one.
Oh, yep, thank you. That's Lily and myself.
Yes.
I think we can continue if that's all right with everyone else. Grants is Corby and someone who would like to work with me on grants. Anybody? All of you.
All of us.
All of you,
Great.
okay, that's fine. Office staff is me, I think that's fine, I'm happy with that. GIS was Peggy and the building inspector. Steve, do you mind
Yeah,
doing
that
the
one.
GIS?
Yep.
I think you're the most qualified person we have right now.
This is computer map.
Comprehensive plan, that would be Renee and myself. Renee is the lead. Code update committee, Corby and Lanfear, that's fine. Technology is Keating and Dorothea. Resident welcome package, that's,
I would just take that right off there, let's get real. We haven't done it in 3 years, unless we come up with a real program. When we come up with a program, then we'll put somebody in charge of it. It just, we just can't seem to be able to find the time to do it, frankly.
I've had some interactions with the sheriff's department recently, so I'm gonna add myself with Dan's name under sheriff's department.
Okay?
Building maintenance, that's myself. Traffic calming, walkability, bikeability, Renee has agreed to do that, and I put myself as a secondary person, if that's okay with you, Renee. Pittsburgh Volunteer Fire Department, we've never had a liaison, Renee suggested this, and I think it's a great idea.
I'll do the second on that.
Okay, so it's Renee and Lily. Comprehensive plan implementation, Renee has agreed to take the lead on that.
What does it mean?
That means any of the initiatives, exploring the initiatives that the comp plan recommends and making sure that we stay on track and we don't lose sight of actually implementing those.
Okay.
Yeah, so that just means I need to be an expert in the comprehensive plan.
And I'll be a second person with you,
Okay.
if that's okay?
Sure.
All right, and have I forgotten anything here that somebody would like to do?
So we're getting rid of the welcome package. Is that what you said? That's the only one
Yes,
we're
for
getting
now, I
rid of?
think
Yeah,
that's,
no, I
to be realistic, it's better than have it on there every time and every time
Yeah.
nothing happens.
The other, what, I'm gonna suggest another change, under newsletter, I'm gonna put /resident communication.
Okay.
And I'm also going to, Bill McBride, who did our survey, he has a great deal of expertise, and I've talked to him about this, and I'm gonna put him in there with, Dan and Renee, if that's okay.
Okay, that's fine.
Because he has some ideas regarding the survey, and, he's just a good resource to have as a third person.
Okay.
All right. I'll make a motion to approve the liaison positions of 2019, 2020.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Next, we have the tax rate for 2019, 2020, which is $4 per thousand of taxable assessed valuation. Sewer rent will be $24.27 for the first 4,000 gallons, and $2.79 for 1,000 gallon, each 1,000 gallons over that. For Wood Creek, the rate will be $5.60 per 1,000 gallons. I'll make a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I'll make a motion to approve our scheduled official meetings. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. I'll make a motion to approve our hiring process and employee training policy.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'll make a motion to designate our official newspaper and bank. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'll make a motion to approve authorization for bonding and check signatures. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. I'll make a motion to approve our official hours of operation in our 2019-2020 floating holidays. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'll make a motion to approve our 2019-2020 fee schedule. Do I have a second?
I have a
Second.
question.
Yes.
Do we see any changes in these from previous fees?
Where you see the kind of highlighted, the darkened ones, are all the fees that were edited or changed for conversations with Steve. He was quite helpful this year.
Steve went through and made
With a fine-tooth
adjustments
comb.
based
Okay,
on
so-
his knowledge and experience elsewhere.
Okay.
So, may I make a comment on the fee schedule?
Sure can.
And I was talking this over with Steve, this is something I've been asking for a few times, is under the zoning board, there's a $100 fee for a temporary zoning permit, and people holding like one-day fundraisers get hit with that. And I really think that we want to encourage little festivals, special events and stuff like that. Discussion with Steve was that if this is like a short-term event, it's really not likely to bother anybody, and we want to encourage it, and I would suggest lowering the fee to something like $25. And discussion we had with Steve is event is a chronicle, a calendar week or less. That might be reasonable, but for larger things like the Buffalo Bills coming in, or something like that, occurring every single day for like a month, it might warrant a larger fee.
So why don't we do this? Why don't we do $25 for 1 or 2 days, $50 for anything less than a week, and $100 for anything over a week?
I think that would be reasonable.
Okay. I amend my motion to make that change.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Okay with that.
Parking fee.
Hold on a minute.
That'd be perfect.
Our parking fee schedule, I'll make a motion to approve the proposed parking fee schedule. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I will make a proposition to approve the proposed 2019-2020 standard resolutions regarding mileage, attendance at schools and conferences, and special meetings, at the licensing of haulers, electrical inspectors, and authorized payments in advance of audit claims. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'll make a motion to approve our proposed procurement building use policy for 2019-2020. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Believe it or not, you are done.
All right,
Did you approve the procurement policy?
we did.
Just did.
I was hoping you could make changes to it.
We still have the ability to make some adjustments. Justin is concerned because the approvals, to get approvals from the trustee are somewhat cumbersome. I had a discussion with Dorothea, and Dorothea, would you share with me what your brainstorm on what we could do for,
Where the consultant reviews, we've already assigned consultants to those boards, and it's a matter of bringing those requests to the board to get them reviewed for approval. And a lot of these requests are well under $2,000. My thought is, as a purchase agent, I am authorized to
To up to 2,000.
up to $2,000. So what I'm suggesting is if Justin sends me an email requesting the use of this person, we can use the request form that was designed by our attorney there, Turner. Brain fart. But anyway, I can go through, check the budget, make sure we have the money to cover it, and then authorize it. If
Okay.
it's over the $2,000, then I could refer it to the board for approval if they're good with that.
are you okay with that, Frank?
Yes, we had a conversation this afternoon, Justin and I. Unfortunately, at the last board meeting, the procurement policy got a little bit confused. It was developed by our council with all the legalese in there, and it shouldn't be that complicated.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I explained that to Justin today, that the board is not approving a consultant. The board is approving the payment of
The
a consultant.
expenditure.
Exactly.
Right.
So it's up to the board chairperson to follow the structure for the bids. And as you said, Dorothea, 1,000 to 2,000, it's up to the clerk. So it's very easy. All you have to do is to document who you're hiring, why you're hiring, what you're paying them for. You just have to document all the information. This was in the audit. The auditors did not take exception to what we were doing. They did take exception that we didn't write it down. We didn't document it. So as long as you document it, and when you get the invoice, you sign it, send it to Mary or to Dorothea, you're authorizing us to pay them, not to hire.
Yeah, okay, so let me share my interpretation from reading this. First of all, consultant service contracts are exempted from the general procurement policy, so I think Dorothea does not have the authority to authorize it. State law, the model under state law, and I can share the law with you, is that the various boards are supposed to be semi-autonomous. State law actually grants boards the ability to hire staff and retain consultants directly. So I'm not saying that I should be doing that, the board should be doing that. Trustees have a role in reviewing the terms of contracts, that is fine. But there's been discussion about the trustees approving every single use of a consultant, which is just overbearing and not a good use of municipal services. So if we have what makes sense to me is if taxpayer dollars are not being used, which is most of the time with consultants retained by the planning board, usually the applicant pays for it. It looks like right now, the process for retaining a consultant, if taxpayer dollars, if the applicant is paying for it, and it's no concern to anybody really, is I gotta get 3 bids, and whether I need to send it to the trustees or not, I'm not sure about, but I have I've had a prior project where we need 5 different types of consultants, and that meant I had to interview for the requirement to get 3 bids, 15 people, and that was all on me, and that was extraordinarily onerous.
Now, I have a question, and this is, my understanding of, with procurement policy in New York State, is if you are selecting a professional consultant, and if when you say you select your landscape architect that you hope to use in the coming year that we approved earlier, and you've done the research to demonstrate why that landscape architect meets the criteria of the PZBA, you don't have to get 3 bids every time you get another use of that consultant. You're free to use that consultant as many times as you want in the coming year.
Again, I don't think that's what your procurement policy says. I think there's widespread agreement of what our policy should be. I just don't think your policy states that. If I read your policy, I think it's pretty clear that says the Village of Pittsburgh will issue a request for proposal to solicit competition when bidding is not required by law or when statutes authorize an alternative bidding. And in these situations, the village will issue RFPs indicating the following to ensure, the standards. And this is for consultants. So the document says we will be issuing a request for proposal for any consultant that we're looking to retain. And the $300 consultant, that's ridiculous.
Well, I agree with you. Yeah, go ahead.
So my suggestion, and I emailed the trustees a few weeks ago with this, was to establish some exemptions for this request for proposal policy. And one of them was for contracts for attorneys, because continuity is often more important with attorneys than necessarily getting the lowest price. And if you switch to a new attorney, they got a steep learning curve, and it's really not in the public interest to fund that learning curve. Also, I think professional services contracts that are not being paid for by taxpayer dollars, unless they're huge, then where you're concerned about possible corruption or conflicts of interest, I don't think that we need to be submitting a request for proposal for something paid for by applicants. Again, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And then also contracts under a certain dollar amount. I had suggested contracts under $10,000. Maybe you don't need a request for proposal for that. You can figure out what that dollar amount is. And as a planning board, I don't think we've ever had a contract over that we've used for under. They're all under $2,000. The largest one I had, the contract I had was $20,000 for a bid, and that was for a large traffic consulting for a substantial thing. We never went forward with that. But, if I think it makes sense to clearly exempt these things from having to go out for multiple bids.
Well, if I could interrupt you, Justin, as we talked this afternoon, the procurement policy was something that was cited in the audit. The policy was written, it could have been written better. You and I talked about how we could make it better. We talked about some of the things that we could do to improve it. And I offered to sit down with you and go over it with you. But with all due respect, I think you're making it a little more complicated than it is. And we could sit down and we could talk about it. But at this point, we could go through everything and spend hours, but we're not gonna solve anything now.
Yeah.
We'll sit down and talk about it.
Okay, I mean, I tried to engage the trustees several weeks ago by offering suggestions, and I was hoping it could have been resolved before now, but as Frank says, things, if you can make changes to it in the future, that's fine. Nothing's gonna bother me for.
Justin, I think we're all in agreement with you. We've had a full plate, but I think, you know, if you would take up Frank's offer, we can get it done quickly and we'll take care of it.
That's fine.
And the other thing, although we approve this policy tonight, we have the ability to modify any of this policy as we need to anytime throughout the year. So as soon as you and Frank meet and come to an agreement on the best way to handle it, we will amend our policy to reflect that. Okay?
And keep in mind, Justin, much of this is the law. Much of this is actually state law, so we can't be throwing out numbers. We do have to agree to what the state says. So we'll talk again.
That's fine, thank you.
Okay.
Okay. All right, member items, and Lily. Oh, Dorothea?
I just had one quick
Go ahead,
request
go
from
ahead.
the board. Believe it or not, we need to pay our bond. So they would like a payment of $45,000. I tried talking them out of it, but they won't listen to me. So if I can have authorization
So
to make
moved.
that payment.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. Lily, you have the floor.
I have just two items. One is, do we have an answer yet on the May 28th meeting? You were gonna ask.
Dorothea was tied up because she put this PowerPoint together for me tonight. I talked to Dan Spitzer. He asked us to see if there's any other dates earlier in the week that would look. Dorothea will be checking tomorrow,
I'll
and
be
then
on
we'll have
tomorrow.
an answer.
To move the meeting up?
To move the meeting up.
Remembering that that's Memorial.
We know.
Yeah, I will
No,
talk to the
no,
school
no,
district and
okay.
see what they can offer us, because I think we're
Okay.
gonna need the auditorium to be on the safe
We
side.
may have to move it later, who knows, because
Okay,
it's a
but-
busy time of year, we don't know
But
yet.
the point that he tried to make is that we need to have a larger, that's what's driving the train.
We probably should be prepared to have a larger venue.
Okay.
I think that's the appropriate thing to do.
And I wanted to say thank you very much to Sophie, publicly for the Arbor Day celebration.
Yes,
On
she did a
Saturday.
wonderful job.
She did a great job.
And to anybody that didn't hear him, we have a talented musician in our CEO, and he's extraordinary,
And he does weddings and bar mitzvahs.
and he's amazing.
Yes.
And I'm planning on him for candlelight.
And the, yes, thank you. And the other thing is, the DOT and the signs that have gone up, we're gonna speak specifically to the ones in South Main. I've had input, I don't know about anyone else, but the question was, what was the process? Did the DOT contact this board?
Renee has an update.
They didn't contact, the town or the village other than to let you know that they were staking it out and they were
Yes.
putting up signposts, but not, they didn't say, hey, we're rolling out these
Kind of safety plan, right?
these, right. So they're using a one-size-fits-all model, which in most communities, you know, they're spaced out like they are between Sutherland
Both?
and those are okay. The ones on Main Street, we're lucky in that we have a lot of crossings there. A lot of communities don't, upstate, and they probably sent their crews out to just put them at every single crossing, not using the context or.
I would like to get an
So-
opinion from Steve Ferrani. I'm gonna call him up and just ask him what he thinks of them.
They sent over, Steve and David Cruz sent over some data on, nobody
Oh, you
studied
did? Okay.
these particular signs,
Mhm.
but there's data on, you know, saturation and how close they should ideally be put together in other contexts, not necessarily the neon signs, but these are the new ones they're rolling out. You remember they used to be yellow, a little nicer yellow, but, so I think we have some
The one thing I'm curious about is they're large, and, you know, on the short term, I'm happy because, God, we need those.
Yeah.
Although I almost got killed the other day crossing Washington.
People are sign blind.
Yeah, they're signed on.
They,
And that's my comment, is they're kind of highway size, and do we need that in the village? That's kind of what I wanted to ask Steve Ferrari.
And I think that we need their engineering perspective on this in
Right.
order to go to DOT with some knowledgeable, good data. Because I think,
Would you like to go over and together and have,
That-
meet Steve like at 8 o'clock some
yeah,
morning?
that
or
would be
something?
great.
may I ask a suggestion? You had said that you were gonna have a meeting with DOT. They never, even as a courtesy,
Talk to us.
came to us and said, this is our proposal, this is what we're doing across the state. How does this fit into your active transportation plan, your pedestrian safety plan, our proposal? If you're already doing one, maybe we need to skip over you because you're already handling this on a local level.
What I would like to do,
Somebody else can have those signs, Bob. Our DPW could take them down, won't cost the state anything. They can put them somewhere on the highway. I'm sorry, what?
I don't think they would approve that.
Yeah, they'll come and put them right back up, right?
I think we, you know, there's a new director at DOT that we want to handle cautiously. What I'd like to do, and the reason I put off the meeting with the DOT is because I had hoped that we would have the ATP approved by now. The town has kind of dragged their feet a little bit. Paul Schenkel has been responsible for planning the last meeting. We need to set that up. I would also, at that meeting, I would also like to push again for the 25-mile-per-hour speed limit. It's very clear to me, walking around this village, the travel speeds are too fast. We have said repeatedly, it's not about any one tool, it's about using all the tools to get more responsible driver behavior in the village. And I think when we're telling people to drive 30, that guarantees 35 or 40 miles per hour. We've all seen the chart that SRF had of what that means for pedestrians. And I think we might want to pick 2 or 3 other items from the ATP and try to go to bat for those and see what we can do.
Okay, given, I respect that, given that it takes a long time to get in to see the DOT or for them to come and see us, a long time, right? They're very difficult to work with.
Yep.
Maybe if you get us on the books,
Well, I think we could, we're at a point now that, you know, I'd like to just sort of share notes with you, Renee, and see if you have any things you would like to get in there. But I would be happy to schedule a meeting for May, and I'm sure we could set that up
with the DOT.
with the DOT.
I think some negotiating is in order.
Okay, okay.
They acted like a 500-pound gorilla here.
Mhm.
And so, you know,
And we do have a complete streets resolution.
so-
The reason we adopted that is they're supposed to communicate with us,
That's
and they did not in
exactly.
this situation.
and they didn't,
And
so.
we know that design has the biggest impact on how drivers behave. We can't even get our pedestrian safety plan finalized.
Right.
And so we do need the signs in certain places, so I don't want to, throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Nobody's
I
talking
agree with
about a
you
carte
on
blanche
South,
approach. I
yeah.
think that we're talking about
Just
specific
the
areas.
12 on South Main or whatever they are. I think there are 10, but I could be.
I think, you know, I'm okay with having them up for a summer because it'll get people's attention. But I also know from what I've learned over the years from Steve Ferrani, that over the years, people stop seeing them, they disappear.
That's right.
So,
Especially when they're online.
you know, I think we proceed cautiously. We can do some follow-up steps. I'll talk to Steve this week and try to get his opinion on them. And then maybe we can move forward and set up a.
He already had a couple of good suggestions, so let's.
Okay, let's share notes.
Defer to them, okay.
Okay, we'll share
Because
notes.
one place, interestingly, they, at least not yet, they have not put it up at the North Main Street Bridge. That was very interesting to me because that's a very touchy, that's one of the most dangerous crosswalks, I think, in the village.
Mhm.
And the sight distance coming over the bridge is so poor there that would have been a natural place to put, I thought, to put those screening signs.
I couldn't figure out why they didn't do it there either unless it didn't fit the criteria, because he said they were put up at all mid-block crossings, and maybe because it's a trail crossing, they didn't put it up there. I don't understand why, or maybe it's coming.
Maybe
We
it's
don't know,
not.
because they don't let us know. Did
That's
they
right,
stake
they're not done.
out,
They should
they
go
stake
over
out there?
Nope, not yet.
Okay. Will you let us know if they, I mean, we need it there, though. We need the bright, ridiculous signs there, so.
Well,
Yeah.
yes, I
Okay.
agree.
Just, it would be good to know what's.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
and there's some other things. There are no crosswalks between Washington Road and French Road. And there are two cross streets where we really should have crosswalks there that would help North Main Street, where there is also a very serious speeding problem. So that's why I want to sort of get my notes together to make sure we're not just going there with one topic, but we can sort of kill hopefully 5 birds with one
Who's
meeting.
The new DOT person that
Kevin
you're talking.
Bush,
Oh, okay, we worked with him with the East
he
End.
was at the last meeting we were at, that's
Yep.
right. Yeah.
New man, the new
New guy,
person.
the new Dave Gary, right.
Is he the one that's on vacation this week?
He may be, I don't know.
The
He was
one
out of the
that's-
office, there was an email that came back that said, I'm out of the office this week, contact Kevin Bush. Is it Kevin Bush?
Well, there's Matt Oravak, who's under him, who's also very active, and Matt, and when we met with DOT, Matt is one of the most knowledgeable people on their staff.
Okay.
All right, any other member items from anyone else? Nope.
Nope.
Okay, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone. Great.
Thank you.
Aye.